What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be working with Flutter. So we're in here at day 5 of hashtag 30 days of Flutter, and we're going to be building another mini app. So today I'm going to actually show you how to work with a web view. Now what a web view does is it essentially acts as a browser, and it lets you load up websites into a widget. So it's extremely simple concept, but I want to show you how to implement it and how to actually work with the controller of that web view so that you're able to, select a page and then go back, and then that will give you the foundation of knowing how to work more extensively with web views. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. Now, once again, we're starting off with our basic app, and as usual, if you're not familiar with this process right here, then just go back and watch the other videos. Now what we want to do is we want to actually work with a package that's going to be called webview. So I'm going to actually go over to pub.dev and I'm going to type in webview. And it's going to be this first one right here, webview Flutter. We go ahead and click on it, and then once again, you're able to see the documentation on it, and it's essentially really easy to implement. We just do webview and then an initial URL. But we're going to be doing something a little bit more complicated than that, and that's where this example is going to kind of come in. We might not be referring to the example. I'll show you how we're going to do it, but essentially we're going to be working with this controller, and we're going to allow native interaction with the web view. So we're going to be able to go back a page, go forward a page, and things like that. So let's go to our installing section, and we'll grab the webview Flutter, copy it, head over to our pubspec.yaml, and under dependencies, we're going to just go down here and we're going to paste it in here, and we're going to make sure that we're at the same level as this Flutter widget right here. So there we go. Now, before I do this and before I actually get the dependencies installed, it's very important that you understand that there are minimum versions that are required in order to use WebView. So on Android, you need a minimum SDK version of 19. And on iOS, I think you need a minimum version of maybe 11. But I'm only going to be running it on the simulator, the iOS simulator, but I'll show you how to do this for Android. So if you're working with Android, what you're going to do is you're going to expand the Android folder. So you're going to expand Android, you're going to expand app, and then you're going to go to build.gradle right here. So then what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down, and you're looking for the minimum SDK version right here under default config. So min SDK version, we need to change this to be at least 19 or higher. So you're going to do Command S once you change it to save that. And for iOS, what we need to do is we'll collapse the Android folder, and now we're going to go into the iOS folder. And for the pod file, what we're going to do is we're going to uncomment this line right here, and I think 9 might work, but we're just going to go with 11, just something that's a little bit more recent. So make sure that you have this line uncommented and you're using probably iOS 11 is good, and we're going to save that. And then we can go back to our pubspec.yaml and we can save that as well. And then VS Code is going to go out and get that package for us. So this is just like a little thing that you have to keep an eye out for. Now let's head back over to our main.dart, and what we want to do is we want to have a page set up where there's like a navigation bar at the top and then also like a tab bar at the bottom, so that we can control which way we're going with our widget or with our web view. So let's start by adding in a navigation bar and a tab bar. All right, so here we go. We have our scaffold, and our scaffold is going to have an app bar. The app bar is simply just going to have this title right here. Put in whatever you want. I'm just going to call mine, or I'm going to put the title as Kilo Loco's website, because that's what we're going to be showing today. And then we have the bottom navigation bar, which we're going to wrap. We're going to have it be a container. This is so that we can control the color of our bottom bar, and it's going to be the accent color. So as you can see, like if you might have noticed when you start up an app on Flutter, you can notice that that it's blue, right? Like if I show it to you right here, we have this blue bar up here at the top. And when we use the theme, then we're going to make that consistent. So whatever the color is up here is going to show down here. I could have done blue, but it's better to just work with accent colors so everything stays consistent with the theming. Now, as you can see, it's just an empty container down here. So it's really small, but it is there. And then we have this button bar, and that's going to be essentially what holds all of our buttons. So it's kind of like a row, but it's made specifically for buttons. So we're only going to have 2 buttons in here, and that's going to be the previous button and the next button. But we already know that these buttons are going to be very similar. So instead of writing it out and duplicating code, what we're going to do is we're going to just start off by creating a function that returns a widget that is just going to be a navigation button. So let's implement that now. So as you can see here, we have this new function called navigation button, and it's going to take in icon data. That's just so that it looks a little bit cleaner at the call site, that we just simply pass in whatever the icon is. In this case, we're going to be using a chevron. So we'll be just simply passing in the chevron, and then we can have the onPress method passed up to the call site so that we can still implement some functionality. So in our button bar, let's go ahead and add the children. All right, and as you can see, we have the 2 navigation buttons right here. Looks very clean in my opinion, and you know we like it clean and tight. That's right. So let's go back over to our app, and as we can see, we have the 2 buttons right here. Now there is a little bit of problem with this spacing, so let's just go ahead and add a little bit of padding to our button bar, and we can just do that by refactoring it and wrapping it in, you know, a padding widget. Oh yes. So let's update the padding now. So as you can see here, we have our padding widget, which is holding our button bar, and then we have some padding, which is just only going to go to the bottom and the right. And if we save it and take a look, looking a lot better in my opinion. So yeah, we're all good to go. Now we just need to implement our actual web view, right? The thing that we came here for, right? So let's go ahead and add the body to our scaffold. All right, and it's as simple as that. Web view, initial URL, pass in some type of URL right there, and we do Command S to save it, and boom! Oh yes. Okay, so this is my website, and as you can see, what we want to do is we want to be able to like scroll through our website, and like the awesome thing is like I don't have an app for my website, so I could just do something like this. And if you are in a similar situation, you can just do something like this: create a website, throw it in an app that has a web view, and bam, there's your website. And it's like I can interact with it and all these other things, you know. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that so cool? It's pretty cool, you gotta admit. So that's all right, right? Like we like this, that's cool, but we want to be able to go back, because at the moment we can't go back, we can't go forward, none of that. And also these buttons are black. Like what's up with that? Let's change the color of those buttons, because oh, there we go. So updated the icon button in our navigation button, change the icon to be icon and the color be white. And as we can see, we out here with not only sexy code, but like sexy UI too, right? So looking good so far. Now, in order to work with our web view and get back, like, or to be able to control it, because remember, we don't have any access to it when it's in here, right? Like how would we reference it? Well, the web view actually provides us a controller after it's done loading. So we need to get the onload controller and then hang on to a reference of that. But we need to do it in something called a completion, not completion, but a completer. And that completer is going to hang on to the web view controller that's provided by the web view after it's done loading. So let's go ahead and add that now. All right, so as you can see, we have our completer right here, which has a generic type of web view controller. We're going to be able to hang on to that reference right there. And then back down here in our web view, you can see that I added in the argument on web view created. It's going to pass in the web view controller, as you can see right here. And then we're going to access our controller, which is up at the top, our completer web view controller. That's this one right here, and we're going to call .complete on it, and that's going to pass the controller back. So this is happening because when you load up a website and you're working with the web view, it's all asynchronous, which means that things happen like at a later time. It's not immediate or right away. Code doesn't just go like line by line. You have to wait for something to happen before you're able to actually get that object back. And what we're doing here is we're waiting for the website to load before we receive this inner controller, and then we pass it to our completer controller right here. So you can feel free to change up the names if this is a little bit confusing, but yeah, that's the gist of what's going on. Now with our controller, what we want to do is we want to actually have the functionality to go back and go forward. So let's go to the bottom of our view, and we'll add in two new functions, one for go back and one for go forward, right? So it's as simple as that. All right, so we have our go back and our go forward methods, really simple, but we're not going to implement them just yet. And that's because we're working with this completer controller. Now the completer controller doesn't allow us to work directly with the web view controller. What we have to do is we have to work with the web view controller that was passed to it by dealing with the future builder. Now the future builder is essentially a widget that allows you to work with things that are not available yet. It's essentially allowing you to create a widget and deal with a widget that doesn't have the data that it needs in order to create it yet. So what we need to do is we need to work with this controller and wrap our navigation button in a future builder, because what we're going to do is we're going to do this on pressed, and we need to interact with that controller in the on pressed method. So let's go ahead and update our navigation button right here. All right, so a lot of things have happened right here with this update. So as you can see now, instead of returning the icon button itself, we're returning this future builder. We're going to be working with the controller future so that we're able to access the actual controller and deal with the controller itself after it's done loading. It's very similar in the way that we would do essentially set state and making sure that Flutter knows what's going on. This is a different way of doing that. So we're working with this future builder, and it's waiting for this controller to be available to us once the web view essentially does that update state with the complete from our completer. So now we have our future and we have our builder. The builder takes in, or is passing in, a context and a snapshot. Now the snapshot is of type asynchronous snapshot, and we can actually make this, we can make it more specific as to what type of snapshot it is. It's a web view controller snapshot. So it's actually going to give us our web view controller, and that's going to be part of that snapshot. Now, when you're working with the snapshot, what you need to do is first you need to check if the snapshot has any data. Did we actually get the controller yet or not? Because at some point, we're going to be waiting to load that web view, that website. And if we don't have that website, Flutter needs to know what to show in the meantime until then. So we need to check if the snapshot has data or not. All right, so as you can see, inside of our builder up here, right? Inside of the builder, we're going to check if the snapshot has data. If it does, then we can return back our icon button. But if it doesn't, then we're just going to return back an empty container, just so that it has something to display if we don't have that data, right? Now, what we want to do is we want to actually change this on pressed to return this snapshot's data, which is going to be that web view controller, right? Because that's what we actually need to interact with, and we want to pass that back to the function that's calling it. So up here, we have our navigation button, which has, the icon, and then it has the function that it's going to be calling. Right now, we're not passing anything in this function, we're not passing anything back, right? But what we want to do is we want to pass that web view controller back so that we can pass the web view controller to our functions that are going to actually interact directly with it. So let's go ahead and implement that. I'll go back over the explanation one more time. All right, here we go. So I'm going to go over this one more time. So some of the changes that were made is I updated the arguments that are passed into the navigation button, right? The function is now going to be called and it's expecting a web view controller to be passed to it when it's called. So in our future builder, our builder is giving us back that snapshot. We're checking to see if that snapshot has data. The data is going to be whatever this object is. In this case, it's a web view controller, and we have that instance of our web view controller. So then what we're going to do is when we press it, when we call this function right here, we're going to pass back that snapshot data. From here, what's going to happen is at the call site, we can see, did I do this right? I think that this is right. I don't know what's going on with it, but this should be right. Anyways, we have the controller that's being passed from the onPressed function, which is right here. That controller that's being passed, the snapshot.data, that's being passed here. And then we're calling go back, and then we're passing in the controller, right? We're passing this controller to the go back function. So as you can see, the go back function is expecting a web view controller, which we're just going to call it controller. Same thing goes for the go forward. It's expecting a web view controller, which we're going to call controller, and then we can interact with that controller inside of that function. So let me save this, and let me also find out what's going on with this error. I think I might be missing parentheses. There we go. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's not too complex. We're just passing like the highest overview just to go over it one more time, because I think that it is kind of confusing. We're getting back an instance of our web view controller after it's done loading. We're passing it whenever we tap on the icon button. And the way that we're passing it is by passing it from here to the go back method and to the go forward method right here at the call site. So now we're able to actually work with it and do our functionality on it. So let's implement the functionality. All right, so as you can see here, we're gonna have this new property inside of our function, our go back function, that says it's gonna be true or false, and it's gonna be can go back. So on our controller, we have this function that is can go back, and it has it returns a future boolean. So essentially it needs to do something under the hood to check if it can actually go back or not, and that process is asynchronous, which means that it's going to take some time before it knows whether it can go back or not. So in order to actually use this, when we click on it and we do the semicolon, what we need to do is, before we can use this go back, because we can't work directly with the future, like it's well, I mean, we can, but it makes it more complicated to work directly with the future. But in order for this to actually just be a boolean or a bool, what we need to do is mark this function with a wait, or mark this call site with a wait. So that's going to say, before you go past this line, before we go any further past this line, we need to make sure that this has come back with a value, and that can go back is just a boolean, not a future boolean. But now we have the nasty red swigglies, right? So what we have to do is we have to mark this function with async. So async is going to essentially say, hey, this is an asynchronous function, which means that it's going to take some time before it can complete, however long this takes essentially. But it doesn't know that. It's just letting anybody at the call site know this is an asynchronous function. If you want to actually receive a value, which there's not going to be a value, we're just returning void. But if you were expecting to receive a value, you need to do another await at the call site if you were going to expect a value back from go back. But all we're going to do is we're going to just do our if statement on this can go back boolean. And then if we can go back, then we'll just say controller dot go back. And this is also a future. So if you take a look at it, you're going to see that it is a future void, but we don't really care to do anything after it. So if we wanted to do something after it, then we would mark it with a wait, right? If we wanted to like do a print statement, or we wanted to do some additional logic. But since we don't care about doing anything after it, it's okay to just leave it as controller.goback. So that's pretty much all we need to do. We just need to do like the equivalent for the go forward. All right, and there we go. So the go forward function is very similar to the go backward function. We're just waiting to find out, can we go forward? And then we check if we can, then just do it, go forward. So let's go ahead and run our app. We'll do a restart and let's see if we have our functionality working as expected. All right, so we have this beautiful, sexy website, right? And I mean, we can't get enough of it. It's just amazing. And then when let's see if I can go forward. You shouldn't be able to go forward. We haven't gone anywhere yet. Can't go backwards. We haven't gone anywhere yet. So if I hit this one and I go to a different page, just like any web browser, now I should be able to go back, and there you go. Bam, it goes back. Can I go forward? Bam, it goes forward. Can I go forward again? No, you cannot. Can I go back again? Yes, I most certainly can. So that's going to be it for today. I hope that you really enjoyed this lesson. There was a lot going on here. Even though this is an extremely simple app, there were really complicated topics that we covered with like asynchronous functions, futures, things like that. I hope that I was able to explain it in an understandable way. I'm sorry if I wasn't. If I wasn't, then let me know in the comments down below. And when we work with futures again in one of the next videos, I'll make sure to try to go through and explain it a little bit more thoroughly. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you for your time. I hope that you're doing great in your hashtag 30 days of Flutter challenge. And if you want to see any more videos like this, then make sure that you subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Now go out there and keep coding passionately.